Mount St. Helens erupted on May 18, 1980, forever altering the landscape. Now, 38 years later, April Craig and Zach Zabliskie set out on a quest to circumnavigate the volcano. The best way to accomplish this feat is via the Loowit Loop, which is a 28-mile trail around the base of the mountain. Many complete the Loowit Loop each year, and the Volcanic 50 allows many trail runners the opportunity to complete the circuit in a matter of hours. However, nobody to date has completed the loop with a 5-year-old green sheet conure, and unfortunately, due to the unfavorable forecast, neither has April and Zach. Here is their account nonetheless. April awoke at 2:18 a.m. on Saturday, October 27, 2018, followed by Zach at 2:30 a.m. Their gear was already packed in the car, and after preparing some coffee and toast, they were off on their journey southbound. The 2012 Nissan Versa handled well on I-5 as well as the winding roads of Washington 503, and the couple arrived at the Climbers Bivouac on the south side of the mountain at 6:45 a.m. After donning the hydration packs and stuffing away other essentials, they started on the Ptarmigan Trail at 7:06 a.m.
The day starts with a gradual 1.8-mile climb up the forested Ptarmigan Trail before reaching the Loowit Loop. The Ptarmigan Trail was uneventful and occurred almost exclusively under Zach's dimly lit headlamp. The temperature must have been in the low 40s, perfect for running. I recall there being fairly thick tree cover until we reached the Loowit Loop, about 1.8 miles into the run. I made the executive decision to take the clockwise direction, a decision we grew to regret in the later stages of the journey.
The first stage of the loop is considered a mud flow and is slightly undulating 8 miles below the southwest face of the mountain. The first mile or two traverses a technical boulder field that is marked with a large wood post every 50 meters. This section was quite interesting to scramble across, but also impossible to maintain a jog. The rocks eventually gave way to a smooth crushed gravel trail that cut in and out of small ravines. Clusters of ponderosa stands pepper the barren landscape, adding a welcome contrast to the rocky moonscape. We spotted our first mountain goats along this section and also caught glimpses of the snow-dusted west face of St. Helens.
The second stage of the loop is considered the blown-down forest and features steep canyons with rapidly running streams, as well as some thickly forested hillsides and scree-strewn slopes. It occupies about 6 miles of the loop. We started the blowdown forest section with a switchbacking descent through a damp forest. After a 1,500-foot descent down to the Toutle River, we wasted about 15 minutes debating the best way to cross without wetting our feet. Eventually, we gave in and just walked through the frigid waters. The ascent up out of the ravine had a fixed rope due to some crumbling slopes. Once on the ridge, we passed through a dense forest with lime-green moss carpeted, dotted with orange mushrooms, which was an unexpected sight. This gave way to a scree slope with sweeping views of the Toutle River carving its way westward and the mountain standing watch to the southeast. Here we spotted a coyote scanning its domain, and upon reaching the pumice plains, we passed a small elk herd that nervously watched our trajectory. The miles along the plains were quick and pleasant. We observed many more elk herds and views of the breach.
The third stage of the loop is the pyroclastic flow, and this section experienced the brunt of the force of Mount St. Helens eruption. This 2-mile stretch is quite flat and scattered with rocky debris. Wind was the hallmark of the short 2-mile stretch across the pyroclastic flow. We enjoyed views of Loowit Falls to the south and Spirit Lake to the northeast. The trail surface was crushed stone with scattered rock. The only vegetation with short grasses, antennaria, and the occasional out-of-place salix springing from the rock.
We next headed back into the blown-down forest, and this section is 5 miles and includes a traverse of Windy Pass. We ran into a group in this section that were covering up the sign for the Loowit Loop, and we accidentally began running the Windy Ridge Trail. We had to backtrack 3/4 of a mile, losing about 20 minutes total with this misstep. We were quite discouraged, and the wind really began whipping from the south and bringing with it a massive white cloud that obscured the entire southeast of the mountain. After getting back on track, we ascended to Windy Pass, and as advertised, it was excessively windy, so much so that we feared that I might be tossed from the ridge. We consulted the map briefly at the saddle and then descended into calm, windless Plains of Abraham. From here we began to celebrate a little too early in anticipation of completion of the loop.
The second trip through the mud flow is the fifth and final stage of the loop and possibly one of the most diverse sections of the trail. This 9-mile stretch passes through the south portion of the Plains of Abraham and then into and out of several ravines before passing through more forest and boulder fields. We moved quickly across the plains but slowed with the undulations into and out of the rocky ravines. When we reached the junction with 8 Caves, we realized we still had 8 miles until we reached the Ptarmigan Trail, which meant that our mistakes had added up to 2.5 miles. Although 2.5 miles is not much, after running 24.5 miles and knowing that rain showers could hit at any moment, we were discouraged. As predicted, the rain began to sputter from the sky around 3:10 p.m., or about 25 miles into the run. We finally took out the raincoats at about mile 27 when the sky really opened up. Fortunately, we entered a thick forest that shielded us from the rain, but after only a mile or two, we ascended back up to a rock field that became difficult to cross in the pouring rain. We really entered the Pain Cave around mile 30, when we descended back into the forest, only 2 miles from the car as the crow flies, but 4.3 miles on the trail. The rain was coming down in buckets. Our shoes, pants, gloves were soaked, and my raincoat was breached. The full effects of fatigue and cold were taking control. We were nearing the end of our resolve. We ascended another 1,100 feet over 2 miles before finally reaching the Ptarmigan Trail.
The day ended with a gradual, bone-chilling, demoralizing, painful 1.8-mile descent of forested Ptarmigan Trail that harbored so much optimism and hope 10 hours earlier. We were elated to reach the Ptarmigan Trail, a trail that marked the conclusion of our loop, our summer running season, and every last ounce of energy. We greatly enjoyed the loop, but the final 3 hours of rain made for a miserable last leg of their journey. Overall, we finished the loop in about 10 hours, 40 minutes, and 22 seconds, with 34.32 miles and 9,757 vertical feet. We quickly cranked the heat in the car and changed out of our wet clothes and headed back north to Issaquah, leaving behind the mountain that has now created a lasting impression in our minds as a place of remarkable beauty and rigorous challenges.